What's up, everybody? Skywalking with Wetz podcast. I'm here to give you an NBA trade deadline video. My thoughts. The trade deadline ended about 3-4 days ago. Today's the 8th. Would it end on Thursday the 4th? Please like and subscribe to the channel. We're a small market podcast here. We're just trying to build up, right? It's my boy Zach and I looking at these analytics. People are watching the vids and they're not even liking it, or they're not even they're not even commenting, letting us know how you feel about the content. I can't control you. That it is what it is at that point. But let's dig in with the first trade that I'd like to talk about is Anthony Davis to the Wizards. Who would have saw this one coming? Anthony Davis to the Wizards. For the first time in his career, Anthony Davis is going to the Eastern Conference to team up with Trae Young, Alex Sarr, and that young core of the Washington Wizards. The Washington Wizards in the last, since they've had Bradley Beal, last 4 seasons, they've been in like this purgatory of like, they brought in Jordan Poole, Kyle Kuzma, and some other guys. They've had some pretty decent drafts of good guys who are good role players plug in. Keyshawn George is a rising star on their team. Bilal Coulibaly is another rising star on their team, potential rising star, right? They got Trey Johnson and they got some other dudes on that team. But then you add Trae Young and Anthony Davis, two vets who've been in the NBA for a while on their team. Trae Young's been to the Eastern Conference Finals, almost beat the Bucks, right, to get to the NBA Finals. That was a decent series. But then you have Anthony Davis, who's been contending with the Lakers for like the last 7 years, right, in LA. And he has a ring, the bubble ring, Mickey Mouse house ring. We don't know. Hey, that's all up for interpretation. What does this mean? This means, for me, the Wizards are trying to win now. If you pair Trae Young and Anthony Davis, together, what does that tell you guys? That means lobs. That means three ball. That means defensive protection at the rim. You got AD and Alex Sarr protecting the rim. That is a deadly duo in the paint to go against. And plus, Alex Sarr gets to learn under AD. So for me, I think this is a win for the Wizards. I saw there were some reports out there saying AD doesn't know if it's the right fit or if he's going to sign an extension or whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, I think the Wizards are a team, especially going into next year, because they're not going to do anything this year. Anthony Davis already said he's not playing. I would be very surprised if Trae Young plays multiple games for the Wizards. I can see him playing a couple maybe, and then, calling it, because they're not going to make the playoffs. But I think this puts them as a top 4, top 5 team in the East. I mean, you got the Celtics, you got the Wizards, not the Wizards, you got the Celtics, you got the Pistons, you got the Cavs, you got, teams like the Heat. Who knows what the Milwaukee Bucks do? And we'll talk about them later. The New York Knicks, Indiana's going to be at full force next year. But I can see the Washington Wizards being a top 4, top 5 team in the East and giving some teams problems. We got to see how it shakes out and how that dynamic looks, But from a defensive standpoint, outside of Trae Young, right? I think the Wizards have what it takes to at least win a series or two in the East. I don't think they're not going to be a play-in team. They're going to win a series or two in the East, maybe if not more. Who knows? AD's health, Trae Young's health is always kind of up in the air, But when you got Keyshawn George and some of those other boys, and depending on their development over the rest of this season and over the summer, I think they're a dangerous team. What does this mean for the Mavericks? I think this is a good spot for the Mavericks. They get their first-round picks. They get second-round picks. They're bringing in expiring contracts like Chris Middleton. They brought in Marvin Bagley, who actually played last night, and he didn't look too bad. I think he had a double-double, right? They got A.J. Johnson, Malachi Branham, some other dudes in there. But at the end of the day, I think this is what the Mavericks want. They got Cooper Flagg and their rising star, dude. How is he not an all-star this year? I don't know. I'm pretty sure he was an all-star. He wasn't an all-star. This is good. This is good for them. Kyrie, I hope he doesn't play this year and he just focuses on next year. But I think the Mavs are fine. So essentially, the Mavs got Chris Middleton, A.J. Johnson, Malachi Branham, Marvin Bagley, and a bunch of first and second round picks for Luka. But we're just going to put Luka and AD in the past. I think, personally, hot take, Cooper Flagg is better for the Mavs franchise than Luka Doncic. Burn me at the stake. I don't know. That's my personal opinion. I think Cooper Flagg offers more on both ends of the ball. Are the Mavericks still psychos for making that trade? Absolutely, but look where they're at. They can't complain. I know Nico's gone and all that kind of stuff. MSU Bobcat, it makes sense, right? Bobcats make dumb decisions. Anyways, no more shade. University of Montana, you know what it is. Anyways, we like Nico. It's cool to see a guy who played at a college in Montana get to that level and be a GM, but at the end of the day, still a wild move. But this is one of the first trades that kind of popped off, and I was like, wow. I never would have thought there was nothing out there saying AD to the Wizards, but I think this is good for both sides here. I think it. I really do. I really think it is. AD's obviously not healthy. You know, him on the Mavs with Kyrie and Cooper Flag, like that would have been great. But at the end of the day, if you're the Mavericks, you know, maybe they're thinking of moving on from Kyrie. I don't know what it is, but their window is so big right now with Cooper Flag. Why not just invest in the future? Let AD go somewhere else because he's obviously not part of their future plans. But that was wild. When that hit, I was like, what the heck is going on? It was a crazy trade deadline last week. Because then we got James Harden to the Clippers out of nowhere, out of Dodge. So the Clippers they started off the season terrible, water break, but they have been one of the hottest teams in the NBA as of late. I actually threw some money on them on Kalshi to make the playoffs, and that stock is going through the roof right now. But reports came out that the Clippers and James Harden were working on a trade, and I was like, what? They're working on a trade? And it turns out that James Harden is going back east to the Cleveland Cavaliers for Darius Garland and DeAndre Hunter. And I believe a second-round pick was thrown on to one of those teams. I can't remember. So now the Cleveland Cavaliers get rid of Darius Garland, a young centerpiece of that franchise, and they bring in a veteran who's about 35, 36 years old, perennial all-star, has never really made it to the finals, but he's always been this close to pair up with Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley, Jared Allen, in that core in Cleveland. So what does this mean for Cleveland? You know, personally, I don't think this means much for Cleveland. Like, we know James Harden. Personally, I like James Harden's game. He like foul baiter, whatever. You got to appreciate James Harden and the player he is. But I don't see this trade taking the Cleveland Cavaliers from, I think they're in the 7 or 6 seed right now in the East, and really beating a Knicks or a Pistons or a Celtics team. You know what I mean? So the Cavaliers are good. Like, trust me, like Evan Mobley's been battling injuries this year, you know, so you add James Harden to that mix. Donovan Mitchell can play more off ball because Darius Garland hasn't been super available this year. He's been battling toe injury all year. He's on and he's off. But, you know, like the lob threats with Jared Allen and Evan Mobley, like that's great. I think that's a great piece for this. But I just don't see this trade doing much for the Cleveland Cavaliers in terms of taking them to the NBA Finals. Obviously, they were the best team in the East record-wise last year, at least top 2. I believe they had the best record in the East. This year they've been struggling because of injuries. But again, I don't see this. I think there's better teams in the East. I think the Celtics are a better team. The Pistons are a better team. The Knicks are a better team. I could see them winning a first-round series. But when it comes to the Knicks, you know, I just don't see them beating a Knicks or a Celtics or a Pistons when it gets to the, you know, conference semifinals. Again, but it like Donovan Mitchell and James Harden, there's going to be a lot of buckets to be had there. And a lot of lobs to the big fellas down low. They run the Twin Towers with Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. I don't think that this takes the Cleveland Cavaliers to that next level, next tier. And it actually closes their window because Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell, they're obviously still in their 20s. I believe Donovan Mitchell, he's not 30 yet. So it's just one of those things where we got to see. I could be wrong, you know, but it just... I don't think it doesn't do much for me. It doesn't move the needle for me in terms of like, wow, the Cavaliers, they're going to win it all. Like it's not that kind of situation. What does this mean for the Clippers? The Clippers, I think, you know, Kawhi's gone. I think Kawhi's going to be gone in the summer. I don't know. There's that, you know, lawsuit he's dealing with. You know, I love Kawhi. I think Kawhi's a stud. He gets hate because he's not always available. He's battled injuries a lot of his career, but he's a 2 times Finals MVP. He's won 2 rings, and it just seems like the Pistons, not the Pistons, but the Clippers, they're ready to move on to the next chapter. Darius Garland, a young all-star. I think he can be a perennial all-star. He can score on all 3 levels. He's a great passer. I think they're going to really kind of build around him because they also just got rid of Zubac, and I think we'll touch on that here in a little bit, possibly, if I have enough time. But yeah, I just don't, I think, if anything, I think the Clippers win this trade. I do, because they're going to get more out of Darius Garland than they were going to get out of James Harden. And it just seems like they're kind of blowing the ship up, especially when they get Zubac out of there. They brought in, wasn't Neesmith. They brought in, anyways, we'll get there. But yeah, it was one of those ones where it's like, I don't think it moves much for me on the Cavaliers, but for the Clippers, I think the Kawhi era and all that's kind of coming to an end. They obviously got rid of PG, and it was Kawhi, James Harden. Brad Beal's been hurt this year. It's been a crap show, but I thought the Clippers were on the up and up. And for for this season, in the purposes of this season, I thought it was a wild move for the Clippers, but I think there might be some other stuff going around in the background, and they're saying, yeah, it's chalked. It is what it is. Who knows? Kawhi might get suspended. I don't know what's going to happen there. Yeah, that was a wild one. I didn't know what to think about it. But another one, like a team that I thought was going to make a big splash, especially in the Giannis sweepstakes, was the Golden State Warriors. And their big splash was Kristaps Porzingis. And, Kristaps hasn't been super available ever since he tore his ACL about 7 years ago. But they got rid of Jonathan Kuminga and Buddy Hield. So Kuminga finally got traded. Good for him. But I don't know. I don't think this does anything for Golden State, especially this year. Steph's 36, 37. He's kind of like, who knows? Steph's in great shape. He shoots the ball, and that's one thing like you can continue to do with age. But, I don't know if Kristaps really takes Golden State over the top, especially this year. Obviously, Jimmy just tore his ACL. Kristaps has barely played this season because he had some illness, and it was a serious illness. I'm not saying that, but it's really hit him hard. And I don't know if I just don't know. And I feel like the Golden State's just doing Steph Curry so wrong and so dirty. Like they couldn't get they couldn't get Giannis, and they weren't playing Kuminga, and they flipped Kuminga and Buddy Hield for Kristaps. If Golden State, let's say Jimmy Butler's healed and ready to go by the time in the beginning of next season, I would assume Jimmy Butler will probably come back. If he stays in Golden State and they don't trade him in the summer, Jimmy Butler's probably coming back in October, November. He tore his ACL like two weeks ago. So that gives him about that 9 months, with the ACLs. But the way, pro basketball players and just pro athletes in general have been recovering from these kinds of injuries, it could be a little shorter. It could, who knows? I don't know. It depends on the health of Kristaps. It depends what they do with Jimmy. And it just depends what they also do this summer. I just don't think that moves the needle for me on Golden State. I think they really struck out on the trade deadline. What does this mean for the Hawks? I mean, they get a young potential star in Jonathan Kuminga. It'll be nice for him to get consistent run. And they get a good shooter in Buddy Hield, but they have, a plethora of forwards in guys like Buddy Hield right now. So it's just I don't know. And I don't think the Hawks they're going to be a borderline play-in team, or maybe not even make the playoffs. So maybe they're just looking at the future to build around Jalen Johnson, and Kuminga can be a big piece of that with Okongwu. Nickeil Alexander-Walker's been playing great. They got some good pieces down there, but, I would say the Atlanta Hawks win this. But another trade that really just caught my attention, and I thought this was wild, and I really want to touch on this, is Jaren Jackson traded to the Jazz. So the Jazz received Jaren Jackson, John Conchar, Jock Landale, Vince Williams, and the Grizzlies just were they got some players back, but they got a bunch of first-round picks for Jaren Jackson. So what does this mean? Let's talk about the Memphis Grizzlies first. What does this mean for Memphis? What I think this means for Memphis is it was a failure it was an absolute failure. Ja, Jaren Jackson, Desmond Bane, Dylan Brooks, Steven Adams, in those pieces around them at that time. If y'all remember when the Warriors won their ring, you know, the Memphis Grizzlies gave them problems, and the Memphis Grizzlies gave other teams in the West problems that year. And this was the year before Ja's suspension. And I looked at the Memphis Grizzlies as a Suns fan. I was like, that is a scary team that we have to go through in the West. You know, Ja's trajectory at that point was this way. Jaren Jackson shoots the three, protects the paint really well, gets blocks. Dylan the Villain, we obviously know what he does. You know, and Desmond Bane, knockdown three-point shooter, can score on all three levels, can play great defense. You know, and now it's all gone. They traded Desmond Bane for a bunch of picks in the summer. They tried their best to trade Ja, but Ja's, you know, trade value is just down right now. And then they get rid of Jaren Jackson, like one of the main centerpieces in that organization, used to be. It was just a failure from Ja's suspensions and Ja's health, you know, Jaren Jackson's health at times, Desmond Bane's ankle at times. Like, it's been a crap show because the year they made that decent playoff run, that next year they were absolutely hurt. Jaren Jackson didn't play too much. It was almost like a G League team out of there. You saw guys like G.G. Jackson, Vince Williams, you know, Scottie Pippen Jr., like guys like that getting a lot of run because those other stars weren't available. And, you know, from being a team that I thought were going to be perennial contenders in the West for years to come, for like talking years, young core, scrappy, tough to play, plays great defense, to now it was a complete failure. I'm not saying it's sad to see because I'm not a Memphis fan, but if I was a Memphis fan, it is sad to see. That is tough break because now the Jazz, dude, they got Jaren Jackson, Lauri Markkanen, Keontae George, Walker Kessler, and they got that young core. They're saying, hey, take these 2 first-round picks in 2027. We probably won't need them in 2027 because we'll be a top 5 team in the West. You know, and they gave away a 2031 pick, you know, that eventually, if this doesn't work out, they can probably get back. They're investing in the future. For this year, though, for the Jazz, I think they're probably going to tank. So they're going to utilize their 2026 pick and just focus on next year. Walker Kessler's hurt, and they're like the 12th, 13th team in the West right now. So they got a really, really young core. Jaren Jackson and Walker Kessler in the paint. That's going to be a great combo. And then you have Lauri Markkanen. What is he going to play, the 3? So it's going to be probably Keontae George, who they're going to have hopefully Ace Bailey starting, Lauri Markkanen, Jaren Jackson Jr., and then Walker Kessler. That's a solid starting 5. And if they keep Collier around and some of those other guys around, you know, the Jazz are going to be tough going forward. They've done a good job. I'd give them an A+ here. But then we have little transactions, you know, Kobe White to the Hornets, Mike Conley to the Hornets. He got waived. Now he's back with the Timberwolves. The Bulls got Colin Sexton and 3 second-round picks. The Thunder got Mason Plumlee. Dosunmu's on the move. Like, the Bulls had a excess amount of guards, so they flipped Dosunmu for Rob Dillingham and some picks. And there's, you know, Julian Phillips goes to the Timberwolves and Leonard Miller goes to the Bulls, you know. Then you got Dennis Schroeder to Cleveland and Keon Ellis to Cleveland. And Sacramento got DeAndre Hunter. Sacramento's a crap show. I can't believe they didn't make a real big move, you know, getting rid of any of those guys. Levine, DeRozan, Monk, Sabonis. Like, if I was Golden State, I'd try and go get Sabonis. Anyways, you know, it was crazy. But one sleeper that kind of like went under the radar a little bit was Jared McCain to the Thunder. The Sixers get a 2026 first rounder and 3 future second round picks, and the Thunder get Jared McCain. In my mind, it's like the rich just get richer. Jared McCain's going to be great in OKC. He's young. What is he, 20 years old? I don't even think the guy's 21 yet. He can shoot. He can play defense. He's obviously came off an ACL injury this year, but I think he's going to fit that Thunder culture really well. I didn't look at how he did in his first game with OKC, but I'm really like, that's a great pickup for the Thunder. I can't believe Daryl Morey said he sold high. I'm not quite sure about that. If anyone remembers last year before Jared McCain got hurt, he was going off. He was doing great for the Sixers because obviously PG was hurt and some other guys were hurt for the 76ers. But it was just like one of those sleeper ones that wasn't like a big blockbuster, but it's like you just traded your first-round pick from last year for a first-round pick this year, and he showed a lot of promise. Like, I'm not sure, but I think the Sixers are going to be okay regardless. They still got Embiid. As long as his knees hold up, PG, I don't know. They got VJ Edgecombe, Tyrese Maxey. You know, the Sixers are going to be okay, but it's like, wouldn't you want to keep that kind of player? But it is what it is. Who knows? They might not. They might know something that we don't. Jose Alvarado to the Knicks. Nikola Vucevic to the Celtics. Nikola Vucevic got traded to the Celtics for Anthony Simons, essentially. I thought that was crazy. Vucevic, I think he's going to fit perfect with the Celtics. Like, the Celtics, man, oh my God. They could make, without Jason Tatum this year, the Celtics can make the NBA Finals. And that's crazy talk, you know? And then Vucevic, he has a couple more years in him of prime Vucevic. He's a walking double-double, can shoot the three, can hit the midi, can score around the rim. He rebounds like a dog. Like, he's going to be great for them. I think he's just a perfect match for them in Boston. And then next year they get Jason Tatum. Like, the Celtics, man, they're great. They're great. But yeah, dude, it was a crazy trade deadline. The Phoenix Suns, we made a trade. We got rid of Nick Richards and Nigel Hayes for Amir Coffey and Cole Anthony. Suns fans, you know, a lot of the stuff I saw and heard on, you know, just from Suns fans and on Twitter and things like that, they were like, well, everyone else is making moves. Let's go make a big move. I'm like, hold on. I don't think this is a bad move at all. People are trashing Cole Anthony. Cole Anthony is a great point guard. He's a good backup point guard, and I think that's somebody the Suns can definitely utilize. He's young. He can score. I believe he's a dog. I think he fits perfectly into our system and our culture. And then Amir Coffey, he's a bucket, dude. He can score. He can shoot the rock. If anyone remembers when the Clippers were really struggling a couple years ago, Amir Coffey was having games. He was unbelievable. So it's like, for me personally, I'm not upset. I think the Suns right now, they're in a good spot. And I've said this from the get-go this year. We are not going to win an NBA championship this year, and that's okay. That is okay. We were in purgatory where we had that expectation of winning an NBA championship, and we didn't even make the playoffs. We made the trade, got Dylan Brooks, we got Jalen Green, we got Mark Williams, we got some guys in here, and it's been working out well. We're like one game out of the 4th seed right now in the West, and Jalen Green's barely played, and Devin Booker's been hurt the last 2 weeks. And so I think we're fine, and I think we get to the playoffs. We're making the playoffs. It's not a question. You know what I mean? But, you know, our focus is winning a series in the playoffs, right? And then we can relook at the roster in the summer and then make moves from there. We don't want to just splurge at the deadline and make moves that are just kind of gambles. I did want to get maybe a Jeremy Sochan or a Bobby Portis at the deadline, but that obviously didn't work out. But I'm not too upset with what we just got. So at the end of the day, for the Phoenix Suns, I think we just stay patient. We got to be happy with what we have, embrace the culture, embrace what we have. And I think the work that we're doing right now is going to pay off, and it's going to attract somebody that we can sign in free agency or we can trade for over the summer to make this roster better. And I think that has to be a power forward. Who is that going to be? I'm not quite sure, but we have a young core. We play good defense. We're struggling to score as of late, but our stars haven't really been playing. But we have a great foundation right now. So for me, it was people were saying, well, we got to look at trading Royce or we got to trade Grayson Allen. And I'm like, hold on, dude. If we're trading Royce or Grayson Allen right now, we got to be getting a banger back. And I'm not quite sure, you know, if that was going to be the case or who we would have really got for that. I love Grayson Allen on this team. I think he fits perfect. Royce O'Neal, I like Royce O'Neal. He fits us perfect, but like if a great deal's out there, I mean, you got to make that trade. But at the end of the day, why overextend right now? We're obviously not winning a ring. I think OKC is a tier or two above us right now. The Spurs are a tier or two above us right now. It's just one of those things where I'm like, everyone else is we're with everybody else in the West, but those two teams, one of those two teams is going to make the NBA Finals. I don't see anybody else really beating those teams out. Just like roll with what we have. Like it sucks. Yeah, we're definitely not going to win a ring this year, but at the end of the day, it's a great year to build chemistry, build the foundation up, keep building this way, right? And those key players that we would probably trade, Grayson Allen, Royce O'Neal, right? Depending on who we get back, it's a gamble. We don't want to go back this way. We want to just keep building here and sell high in the summer, whatever it may be. But I know people are a little frustrated with it, and I get it. But at the end of the day, man, I'm enjoying the season. It's just fun to see a fun, energized team that plays well on both ends of the ball when we're healthy. And overextending and seeing, like, I know we see the Jazz making moves. We see, where OKC and San Antonio are right now, But at the end of the day, I'm just like, hey, yeah, and again, then we have the Wolves. I think we're close to the Wolves. It is what it is. But I know I see those teams too. But right now, let's just focus on now and focus on what we have and let it all shake out in the summer. Because Devin Booker's still that guy. Let's get Jalen Green back, because it's like, why make a move now and we haven't even got a healthy Jalen Green? It could be better or it could be worse. Like, we don't know yet, but we just have to see it play out. Let him get healthy. Let him start getting buckets. I got a lot of faith in Jalen Green, I should say. And, obviously he's been hurt. Some bums on Twitter are saying, oh, it's Bradley Beal all over again. Dude, you guys need to shut up. Ridiculous, like, hamstring. Yeah, I get it, dude. A hamstring, if you ever had a hamstring injury or heard about a hamstring injury, those things can last for a long time and nag and nag and nag and re-aggravate and things like that. Just let the dude just kind of get back. He hurt his hip. It is what it is, but I think you can't compare him and Bradley Beal. And I like Bradley Beal, but that's just a completely different thing. Like, Brad Beal said what he's supposed to say. Great PR team. I want to be here. I want to be a Sun forever, whatever. But the guy, obviously watching him, he was checked out. You know what I mean? But like Jalen Green, like, give him a shot, man. Like, injuries happen. It sucks. We've dealt with injury guys like Bradley Beal the last 2-3 years. But like, let this guy just get healthy and let's just see what the team looks like when him, Book, Dylan the Villain, Grayson Allen, Mark Williams, and all the boys are healthy and we're out there. Let's see what that product looks like first before we make any rash decisions. But yeah, man, trade deadline was crazy. Giannis, I don't know what the Bucks are doing, man. I would have liked to see him get out of there. Now they're saying they want to create a team and they can make a contender around him. I think they're just blowing smoke up their butt at that point, and I think probably we'll see him move in the summer. But I just don't see I don't see the Bucks making any kind of moves to really create a contender around him again. I think that era's shut. They got lucky with the ring, with Saric and Chris Paul getting hurt in the finals. Like, they should just be happy with that, and they should let this guy go somewhere else and thrive and contend for rings. If it's Miami, if it's Minnesota, the Warriors are such a crap show. I don't think he'd go there. But, like, wherever it is, it'd be cool to see Giannis go elsewhere and thrive. I don't think he's the guy who's going to say, trade me. He's not going to say yes. He's not going to say no. I just think the front office got cold feet. And I get that. It's hard to let a guy like Giannis go. But at the end of the day, I think that ship sailed there. Golden State, crap show. It is what it is. But it was a cool trade deadline. I think we're all waiting for that Giannis news. It didn't happen. But it is what it is. The Bucks are just not going to make the playoffs, and they might make the play. I don't know where they're at right now, but if I'm Giannis, I just stay off the calf and just get healthy. But it is what it is. If you've tuned in, this far, again, like and subscribe. Show me some love. If you don't, it is what it is. You're going to see me again. Love y'all. Peace.